Hi everyone and welcome back to the George Collection. I'm Rachel Rightside Blonde. Today marks episode 98. We're inching our way closer to that magic 100 number. I've been doing this for well over 2 years and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. In fact, I think we're just getting started. And there's a lot of great coincidences I found for today's episode. I think you guys are going to like it. But before we actually get into this episode, does it seem a little dark in here to you? Seems a little dark today, doesn't it? I don't know why. I think, the lights are on and everything, but maybe we need a little more light somewhere. A little more light. As God said, let there be light. Ah, that's better. That's a lot better. I love my new sign, guys. I'm so excited to show it to you today. I know that was kind of dorky, but that's what you get with me. Tiffany Blue Right Side Blonde sign. I'm so excited to show this. And I'm not quite finished yet. I have some things I'm going to put back up here on the wall, but at least you get to see the sign and some other goodies that I brought out here as well. So let's get into episode 98. 9 plus 8 equals, and that number's been showing up a lot lately. It's going to show up a lot today in this episode as well. So here we go. As you know, I like to read George magazines, the old George magazines from JFK Jr.'s time. And I like to bring to you coincidences that have been playing out over the years and different news stories that have been playing out as well, like Bill Gates saying he funds population control, stuff like that we find really interesting nowadays when it's all kind of playing out right in our faces. Recently, I finished America's Reluctant Prince. I had read parts of it, the parts that pertain to George, but I hadn't read the parts that talked about JFK Jr.'s plane crash. And I wanted to share those coincidences with you today from both this book and the People Profiles book that outlined a lot of the things surrounding JFK Jr.'s plane crash and the different numbers that surround it. So here we go. All right, in this book by Stephen Gillen, he talks about snapshots after John's plane goes down. And he was saying how it was a big blur after John's plane went down. And on snapshot 2, he was talking about how a garment bag that belonged to Lauren Bissett had washed up on the shores of Martha's Vineyard. And then he was still in denial. John was such a vital force, it felt inconceivable that he could be gone. As much as I'm embarrassed to admit it, I kept telling everyone that this occurrence would be John's yuppie version of PT-109, when his father rescued his crew after their ship had been sliced in half by a Japanese destroyer during World War II. I had to go back and look up and see if that was really what it was called when John's dad rescued the crew after their ship had been sliced in half by the Japanese destroyer, and it was PT-109. Well, in Gematria, 109 equals 17 spelled out. That's interesting, right? But that's not all. In snapshot 5, Gillen writes, "The novelty of the scene caught my attention, so I glanced over and saw a CNN headline declaring that the Coast Guard had found the bodies submerged in about 116 feet of water. 1 plus 16? Okay, another 17. Also, they found the wreckage about 17 miles off the coast of Martha's Vineyard."
Through radar analysis of a better location, better possible location, and we are now centering our search about 17 miles west of Martha's Vineyard, the approach to Martha's Vineyard Airport. Indications are that we may have found some debris, and that's being investigated right now.
Later, 350 guests were invited to the memorial service at St. Thomas More Church on East 89th Street. 8 plus 9 equals?
A private memorial service was held this morning for John F. Kennedy Jr. and his wife Carolyn at a small church here in New York City. The service was attended by President and Mrs. Clinton and their daughter Chelsea, by friends and family, 25 Kennedy cousins, uncles and aunts, and those who were most immediately affected by the tragedy. They came, young and old, and from 3 generations of Kennedys and their friends, to pray this morning at the Church of St. Thomas More. This was John Kennedy Jr.'s parish church in his youth, a fitting choice his family felt to mourn his death and that of his wife, and to celebrate their lives.
So those are some pretty interesting coincidences, but there's a few more in this People Profiles book, John F. Kennedy Jr. And it says at 2:15 a.m., 2 plus 15, Saturday, July 17th, more than 5 hours after Kennedy's anticipated arrival, a Kennedy family friend phoned the Coast Guard. Only then was the search launched. So the search was launched at 2:15 on July 17th. On Thursday morning, July 22nd, 17 relatives were taken by the cutter Senable to the Navy destroyer Briscoe. Beyond range of cameras, the Kennedy and Bissett families spread the ashes off the Briscoe's stern. 17 people were on that ship. And what do you think Briscoe is in Gematria? It's 71. Mirror that, it's 17. These coincidences are quite mind-boggling, and I just wanted to share them with you. Another kind of interesting coincidence is that the 17th issue of George magazine is this one with George Clooney on the cover, and it talks about 25 years later, weird Watergate wonders. I think it's very interesting that John Kennedy Jr. chose to put Nixon on one of the covers, which is behind me here. And he also had another issue in which Bob Woodward was criticized. So this is what I'm going to be focusing on in the 99th episode of the George collection. That is the connection between the Richard Nixon cover, this cover that says Watergate Wonders, and the June-July 1996 issue of George that features a critical article about Bob Woodward. I think you guys are going to really like that one. That does it for this episode of the George Collection. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.
Magazine, George, which is a hoot of a magazine. I thought you were a lawyer.
I was.
What happened?
Well, we decided, actually taking a cue from folks like yourself and you around the 1992 election, that there was an opportunity here to change the definition of a political magazine. Certainly the way Americans were accessing information about politics and politicians was changing. Candidates were appearing on late night talk shows, on talk radio, on sitcoms, and there was a kind of a leveling process, and while the rest of media clearly had caught up with that, we felt that political magazines per se hadn't.
Your mother was a hell of an editor at Doubleday.
That's what I hear.
Would she have liked George?
I think she would have.